Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Force Strategy Gaming. Going to be taking a look at a Protoss strategy today. Don't know why that was sped up. Lots of nerd rage going on at the beginning of the game as well, so that's pretty exciting. But let's get right into the game itself. So a Protoss strategy, what are we looking at today? Well, first let's name the players. Our opponent here is Cuba, the Zerg player. And the Protoss player that we're going to be focusing on is Nani. Let's go right into Mr. Nani Vision here. Yeah, again, a whole bunch of nerd rage at the beginning of the game. Kind of funny. But anyways, what we're looking at today, the strategy that we're going to be looking at is opening up with a 2-gate Void Ray against a Zerg player. Using the Void Rays to harass, try to pick off Overlords, pick off expansions, outlying buildings, stuff like that. And this can be very, very effective if done properly. You're going to, of course, want to pay attention to your Void Ray. The other great thing, too, is you can transition quite easily into Phoenix. And Phoenixes are very strong against Zerg, lifting up queens, harassing the queens, picking off workers as well. And then, of course, for Overlord harassment. But opening up with the Void Ray going to be very strong, and you can do a lot of damage with it. The real thing that you're going to need to avoid, of course, early game, Spore crawlers, if he happens to get any of those down, obviously want to avoid those. Stay away from queens as well. Queens can be very, look at bleeping skillless rat, pretty funny. Stay away from queens as well. They're going to be very dangerous for you. You definitely, 2 or more queens can take out a Void Ray pretty much no problem, especially using transfuse as well. So yeah, going to be opening up with 2-gate Void Ray. We're going to look at the effectiveness of that, also trying to move into an expansion as well. But specifically in looking at opening up with a 2-gate Void Ray, what we want to see is the decisions that Nani is going to make when it comes to early game units and when he's getting a Stargate and stuff. So we'll be getting into that in just 1 minute. Scouting the opponent, of course, seeing pretty much standard stuff, looking for that fast expansion. Not there as of yet. A lot of Protoss players like to harass Zerg players, stop them from expanding by putting a Pylon down. So that's an option. That's something you could do as well. Back in the main base, let's take a look at this opening build order. Starting off fairly standard with a 9 Pylon, 13 Gateway, 14 Assimilator, and then going to be getting that Cybernetics Core right as soon as that Gateway drops. So that's going to be at about 18 supply as well. Coming out, of course, with that first Zealot, going to be a good idea. Block the choke off, prevent you from, getting any Zerglings into your base. That's, of course, very dangerous, and you want to avoid that. So as soon as this next 100 minerals comes up, we're going to be seeing that from Nani. Just doing a little bit of dancing over here with the probe. That's very fun and exciting. He's probably celebrating the new year. I would be too. So yeah, continuing to macro up in the early stages of the game. The effectiveness, again, can't be understated of getting an early game Void Ray. Very strong, going to be very effective. The key thing, once more, is that you need to pay attention to it. You need to make sure you're microing properly. You're paying attention to what it's doing. You can't just throw it haphazardly into your opponent's base, running into spore crawlers and running into queens. That's going to put you in a lot of trouble. So we can get a Stargate right now. Cybernetics Core is up. You can get a Stargate. You could have afforded it, but you're not going to want to. You want to wait until you get at least 1 sentry out. Why are we waiting until 1 sentry is out? Why are we seeing Nani doing this? It's pretty simple, to be honest with you. Going up for this higher tech, trying to go for a Void Ray, it leaves you very vulnerable to early pushes. It would be irresponsible to get the Stargate first and then go for this sentry. You want to get the sentry first. You need to get the sentry first. If you don't, an early roach push, an early Zergling or Baneling bust, anything like that is going to kill you. Plain and simple, flat out, it's going to kill you. Also going to come out the second sentry after this first one. Again, we want to save up the energy, and we want to be able to force field if you see a push coming. So you, of course, need to pay attention to the minimap. If we're over here running around with our probe or whatever, look at the minimap. If you follow my mouse cursor down here to the bottom left, and pay attention to see any blue blips that might be moving into your screen. And then, of course, you're going to want to quickly move on over to that spot to drop a force field down. But Stargate now just coming in, and then that first Void Ray is going to be coming out very shortly as well. You can see a little bit of early aggression with these Zerglings here. So obviously going to try to keep your probe alive, but you need to not go Gateway, Cyber, Stargate. It needs to go Gateway, Cyber, and then a sentry, and then the Stargate. Again, because you are just so vulnerable, it wouldn't be the wisest decision in the world to go straight for that Stargate just to get it super fast, because if any player pushes out against you relatively early, you will die against it. And actually, we're going to see why these sentries so early are so essential. Of course, getting Warp Gate research, that happens every game. And before we get too much further into this, I do want to go over, there's that Void Ray. I do want to go over that opening build order. So we saw, again, that 18 Cyber, then there was a 19 with that second Assimilator, 23 supply, that Warp Gate research started, 27 supply is when that Stargate dropped down, 28 supply was that second gateway. So again, this is a 2-gate Stargate opening, going for early Void Rays. The goal right now is to try to pick off any Overlords, just fly around, see if you can find some, kill them, and then move on into the base and see what damage you can do as well. Also coming out with an expansion. If our opponent was macroing up very hard, and if they weren't going for early aggression, you could get this up and be pretty safe. But we're going to see an early push, and we're going to see again how essential these sentries are at defending against that. So first Void Ray is out and on the move, and let me check that unit right there. So yeah, just one Void Ray out, 4 sentries, and a Zealot. That's what you're looking at for early game defenses. But it's going to be enough. So here's that Roach push, and again, this is why you needed those sentries. If you see a push like this, lots of Roaches, a bunch of Zerglings, you're going to need that. Obviously going to need to cancel that as well, but that's okay. I'd rather have you cancel an expansion than die to a push because you didn't have the sentries out to basically defend against that. So Void Ray just moving around, trying to find some Overlords. See how many kills he has thus far, just the 1. Obviously retreating at this point to defend against this push Void Ray. You know, these Roaches and Zerglings, try as they might, they aren't going to be doing much of anything against the Void Ray, not even with upgrades. So they can do what they want. They can dance around and try to be all funny and fancy, but they're never going to touch this Void Ray no matter what they do. Maybe if they like got on top of this tree and tried to jump up there, but no, not so much. So obviously you can see the effectiveness here against the Roach push if you do go for that early Void Ray. As long as you can stop them from getting in your base using that force field, you're all set. Force Field, in my opinion, one of the stronger abilities in the game. Very, very strong. It prevents and saves you from a lot of things. Obviously, drops can still happen. Obviously, massive units can crush the Force Fields, but early game, Force Field's pretty key at survival for Protoss. So if you haven't yet, get comfortable with using sentries on a regular basis. Get comfortable with Force Fielding. Transitioning now into that Robotics Bay, allowing us to move into Colossus if you deem it necessary. Again, we saw a Roach and Zergling heavy army. Here you're going to see how effective Queens are. Just 3 Queens going to be fending back these 2 Void Rays pretty much no problem. If they had the energy to transfusing that 1 Queen, it would have been even more silly. Obviously you don't want to take too much hull damage. You know, once you start to get into your actual life and the shields are depleted, make sure you go ahead and retreat. Let them charge up their shields, and you can use them for another fight to almost full effectiveness. Pylon placed over here, purpose is twofold. One, you're going to see a 3rd expansion attempt to go down, but also you can warp in some units. And there you go, right as I mentioned it. I did not plan that at all. Right as I mentioned it, an expansion drops down. So now Nani is well aware of that. He can move out with his Void Race, which is exactly what he's doing right here, and try to take that out before it finishes building while it's still pretty low on health. Obviously, also, since the creep is not spread over here, it's going to be difficult for Queens to move over to defend. So you have a lot of options with this build, going Gateway, Cyber, Stargate, Robo. A lot of versatility, a lot of choices. You can see that choice to come out with that Robotics Bay to get Colossus. You could also move into getting some more Phoenixes. If you want to get Phoenix heavy and do a lot of Overlord harassment, that would be an option for you. So all these different things you're capable of doing once you have all of these tech buildings up and in place. Expansion up, of course, as soon as we can. You did see again that initial expansion got canceled because of that early push, but once you fend off that push, those Void Rays were used to do exactly that. Then you can go ahead and get that expansion up and get it saturated and just keep on trucking along, keep on macroing up, getting your units, making sure you keep all your production constant. You can see the Void Rays taking that out no problem. If I hit everyone vision, he was trying to bring a Hydra over, but wasn't quite enough. Wasn't able to get them over in time, so there you go. Back over into Nani vision though, getting the upgrade, Thermal Lance. That of course is going to be very effective. Things you want to continue to do while you're playing the game, continue to scout. We can see these additional buildings being dropped down. Talked about it before, you can support about 4 production buildings as Protoss on one base, 3 gates in a Robo. The reason you see like 2 gate Stargate as opposed to 3 gate Stargate is because the Void Ray is very expensive. So depending on the type of unit you're getting, you might not be able to support those 4 buildings, but about 4 gateways, 3 gate Robo, stuff like that, 2 gate Stargate. But the point is that once you expand, you can afford those additional buildings, so that's why we're seeing these 2 additional gateways come down. And yeah, there you go. Seeing a push right here by grabbing the Xel'Naga Towers, this speaks again to the importance of having Xel'Naga Towers. Now we are well aware before the push is at our base that it's coming, allowing you to position your units, allowing you to prepare properly, keeping the Colossus in the back, Zealots in the front. Sentry is going to be used for Force Field as well as Guardian Shield, and there's that push coming, and well aware right now. So again, even trying to keep the Void Rays a little bit back, out of the range of those Hydras, use them primarily to pick off those Roaches, and you're going to be all set. It's all about awareness of what your opponent's doing, and then proper preparation with that awareness. And that's why it's important to scout, why it's important to have Xel'Naga Towers, why it's important to use observers. All of these reasons, all of these things are very crucial to being successful in the game. Void Rays, again, no problem against the Roaches. They're not going to be jumping up anytime in the near future. Also, you know, even trying to grab this tower would be good as well. Observer placement somewhere around here, that would be a good position. It gives you that extra vision of the map. Cuba saying you were so bad-mannered. I suppose for winning a fight, that would make you very bad-mannered. Although Nani was kind of ridiculous at the beginning of the match, but that is neither here nor there. The point is trying to do all these things to make yourself a better player, keeping up the scouting, keeping up the macro. Again, you can see that pro production, constant, non-stop, keep it going. People complain, well, what if you're fully saturated? Yeah, you're saturated here, pretty saturated here. The whole point is that as soon as you drop an expansion, you can pull about half your workers off of the main line, bring it on over to the expansion, and you have another saturated base, as opposed to stopping at saturation, then dropping an expansion and having to spend all this time building up all of your probes to saturate the new base. You just much rather keep that production constant and then saturate it as soon as it's up and available. Again, the idea of keeping your resources low. Resources sitting up here could be an army. It's kind of wasted potential. That's how you have to think about it. So you want to make sure you use your warp gates whenever they're off cooldown. Keep those units coming in. Continue the production out of the Stargate and that robotics facility. We can see some scouts going down, dropping that pylon. This pylon is serving the exact same purpose of the pylon over here, making you aware of any new expansions that are coming. With the Xel'Naga Tower, seeing the push, we see these units easily going to be able to engage them and take them out. It's obviously not a full, strong, hard push. Looks like he's moving it down to take care of that pylon, but, you know, had he tried to push forward and try to poke at the front of the base, you would have been well aware. And yeah, this is how you play StarCraft. pretty simple stuff. You just basically, I hear a lot of people talk about the late game and how they get uncomfortable with things. Here's another reason why it's important to scout. Checking this thing over here. Obviously you want to get rid of that creep so that you can go ahead and expand. But when people talk about the late game, the truth is you really have to think of it just as an extension of the early game. It's not that much different. All you need to do, the only real difference is that you have more expansions and you have more production buildings and more units to manage. But use your hotkeys, keep everything on your hotkeys. We can see here that those warp gates are hotkeyed. A good idea for the average player as well to hotkey a Stargate and Robotics Facility to make sure that that production is non-stop. And just keep it all up. Keep up production of your units, keep expanding, keep scouting, keep doing these basic things. The late game is no different as opposed to the early game, except you're doing more of the same thing with more units and more bases, basically. Going to be moving out, trying to look for some expansions here. We can see Nani about to do a Doom push with all these Colossus, Void Rays, and that mix of Gateway units. It's going to be very difficult for the Zerg player to handle it, especially considering the army, the unit composition that he has being mostly Roach Hydra. Once you get Colossus on the board against Roach Hydra, you're pretty much in a solid position. You should be doing pretty well. Void Ray is obviously going to be very effective as well. Look at that giant clump of units. That is a lot of health bars sitting out right there. And you can see again, while this attack is occurring, there's still production going on. So you're going to be moving forward, engaging, making sure you want to get that Guardian Shield down. Of course, keep the Zealots in the front. Guardian Shield is going to help a lot against these projectile attacks. And also try to keep your Colossus safe from anything like Corruptors. Target firing them with things like your Stalkers as well as these Void Rays is certainly going to be a good idea. And if you can mop up the units like we have seen here, then you're going to be obviously in a good spot. You can see that Cuba calling good game as soon as that one expansion comes down. I think that's something else that's important to realize before I wrap up here with the build order. You'll see this happen in a lot of professional games, and people question why it happens, why just because an expansion died that the player called good game. The truth is that StarCraft is so much a game of economy. Whoever has the stronger economy and whoever can harass his opponent's economy the most is likely to be the victor. And you have to think of it like this. You know, economy, your resources, your Vespian and your minerals, is what you use to build up an army. It's what you use to have the force to defend yourself and to attack. So the person with the stronger economy, by default, has the stronger force. As long as they're not just letting their resources pile up, as long as they're using everything, the person with the stronger economy has the stronger force. So when you lose an expansion, especially at this high level of play, it means you're pretty much guaranteed to have a weaker economy for quite some time, unless you can counterattack and take out your opponent's base. But if that's not possible, obviously here Cuba saw that he didn't have the units to be able to successfully defeat the rest of Nani's units and also counterattack to hurt his army. So he realized at that point that the game was over. There's just no way he was going to win. So with that said, focus on attacking your opponent's economy, focus on taking out expansions. It's going to give you a huge advantage. And if they realize the way the game works and the way the game plays out, that they'll probably realize that once you've killed their expansion, it's very slim to none their chances of a victory. So let's go over that build order real quick, that opening build. We saw that 9 Pylon followed up by a 13 Gateway and a 14 Assimilator, 18 18 supply is when the Cybernetics Core came down. 19 supply was that second Assimilator. 23 supply started that Warp Gate research. 27 supply getting that Stargate, and again, that is a little bit delayed because you do want to use at least 100 Vespian to get out 1 sentry early game to help defend you against early pushes. It is irresponsible and you will lose games otherwise. Any early pushes, if you go straight Gateway, Cyber, Stargate, you will lose, especially since you're only likely to have maybe a Stalker and a Zealot. You really need those force fields to protect you. 38 supplies when Nani attempted to go with this expansion. We saw that early push forced him to cancel it, but obviously once you defend and push back that early attack, you can go ahead and put that up. And then 44 supply is when you saw the Robotics Facility. And once you have all these buildings up, so the gateways, the warp gates, the Stargate, and the Robo, you do have a lot of options. You can be very versatile. You see a nice mix of units here, and you're going to deal with a lot of what your opponent could throw at you. So once again, guys, this has been Force from Force Strategy Gaming. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Do stay tuned for more strategy videos and commentary, and as always, guys, if you like what we're doing here, if you like our videos, please do subscribe to our channel. It helps us out tremendously. Keep watching and keep owning, guys. To his units and take out as much as possible. Also going to be seeing a drop take place right now. Once you get medevacs up, again, you're going to continue up your production, Marines, Marauders, medevacs, and once you get your medevacs up, go ahead and start dropping. And then we have this factory down, so you want to start going for siege tanks as well and try to do as much damage as possible. So the idea with this is that if you've done this much damage, there's a very, very small chance that they're going to have anything like Meatless on the board. And even if they do, your Marines will do pretty well. They'll be so low on resources that they won't be able to afford a ton.